my dearest chess friends, and welcome to this chess class with International Master Camilla Tobano here for you. And I'm welcoming you to my YouTube channel, and I invite you to subscribe to it and to like the videos and share them with your friends. And please remember the ring button so that you can get notified whenever new videos are being published. Okay, so let's start. In this video I would like to show you how to attack with a pair of bishops, and we will see it exactly in a Queen's Endgame. Okay, the game we're going to analyze together is the one played by David Navara as white against Navara-Topalov as black. Okay, so we can start, and we'll see that they start with actually the King's Indian attack because white is developing the bishop in fianchetto, and so black is already preparing a pawn chain on the long diagonal such as to block white's bishop on g2. Okay, so knight f6, castle, and here we go with the Yugoslav variation, bishop to g4. Pawn to d3, and black continues developing his pieces. It's important to take the control of the e5 square, and white is attacking the pawn chain from the side because he wants to open the diagonal, right? Okay, so there's a trade, and the bishop is still blocked by the pawns on c6 and b7, and the d file has just been opened. So now black will occupy the center with his pawn on e5, and the pawn on c6 is controlling the other central square in such a way that white will not be able to bring the knight on d5 with the maneuver knight c3 d5, for example, and the knight will not be able to go on b5 either, just in case the queen will go to c7. We'll see. Okay, so white develops the queen and intend to bring the rook on d1. Black is taking the control of the g5 square, not allowing a pin, and finally white is pinning the knight on d7, threatening to take the pawn on e5, so black has to move the queen away. It has a nice square, and the pawn in the center is now safe. The queen is also safe because the knight cannot go to attack it either on d5 or b5, as we have already said. And now black retreats the bishop, attacking the weakness on c4. White will defend it and prepare for developing the other bishop in fianchetto. Okay, it's time for black to continue developing the minor pieces and bringing the bishop on a quite active position toward white's king and attacking the pawn on f2. So white wants to get rid of the bishop returns. Okay, it's very important not to allow the trade, because in that case there will be a complex of dark squares in black's territory that remain very weak, especially d6 and e5. Okay, let's continue. Now it's a very interesting idea for white to bring also the second knight on the side of the board. We know by the principles that it's not such a good idea to do so, right? But there are exceptions. In this case, the knight is intent to go on f5, which is a weak square for black, and black does not have to allow that entrance. Okay, so he pushes the pawn to g6 to block the knight from going to f5, because in that case black will have to trade one of his bishops, and he wants to keep the pair of bishops till the end. Pawn to h3, and it's very interesting. Now black cannot castle short because white is attacking the weak pawn on h6, so he will have to castle in more steps simply by bringing the king move by move in the castle. Okay, king f8, wow, and white develops also the other bishop in fianchetto, so he controls both the long diagonals, and the knights are both on the side. I can see a nice symmetry in here. Okay, the other rook goes to e8, and white is blocking the pawn on e5, and probably he wants to push also the pawn to f4 to create a conflict in the center, and in this way he will be able to open the long diagonal, and so the bishop on b2 will become so strong. Okay, so black does not have to allow that. So king to g8, rook to c1, and king to h7. In just 3 steps, black has castled and is defending the pawn on h6 with a king. Remember, it's not a good idea to move any of these pawns because any move with a pawn will leave some weak squares around. For example, if h5, g5 will remain weak. If black pushes g5, f5 remains also an outpost for white. So black has to keep the pawns as they are. Okay, so white finds a very nice and energetic move, knight to f5, still wanting to trade one of the bishops. Okay, so if black takes on f5, then white takes back with a pawn and the bishop on e6 is trapped. So white will take the piece back. Okay, so after knight f5, black has to move away the bishop to keep it. And now white retreats the knight. And black is trying to simplify the position a little bit. And now the position will complicate a little bit. White is going to gain a pawn after this trade, okay? So white will not take back on a4, but instead takes on e5, threatening also the queen and the knight on f6. Okay, so black plays bishop to d6. Okay, now obviously if white will take on d6, queen takes back, rook takes back, and knight takes on b2. Okay, so let's see. Bishop d6, queen takes f6, threatening the checkmate on g7. But black just makes it right in time to trade that bishop. And what have we got here? Well, white is 1 pawn up, but also many weak squares on the dark square. So what black is going to do now is threaten bishop to a3 with an attack on queen and the rook subsequently. Queen to c3 and bishop to b4. Black will activate his bishop. We'll see if the pair of bishops is enough compensation for the loss of material, and it is, because what black is going to do next, he wants to trade rooks, remain with the queens, make the minor pieces passive, and then simply try to open the position so that the pair of bishops can become so powerful. Okay, queen to e5, bishop to queen to g5. Black wants to trade queens and white avoids it. Okay, and now it's time to trade rooks. One rook first and then the other. First, of course, there was a threat, an immediate threat, and now black is threatening the knight on e3. The knight goes back, defending g3 because the f2 pawn is pinned, and now rook to d8. Okay, white attacks the queen, that goes back, attacking on a3, and the rook's trade, and now black has the only open file that is on the board right now. Okay, pawn to b4 and queen to d4, just trying to trade queens because then the bishops will attack the pawns easily. Okay, queen to c2, bishop goes back to e7 and c5. Okay, it looks like now white's pawn structure is safe, but actually it is not. Okay, so since the pawns are in a chain, they hold hands and so they defend each other. But now what black is going to do is it will try to break this pawn chain so that the rest of the pawns will remain unprotected. Okay, so a5, can you see that black's pieces coordinate very well? They have a common purpose, they have a target, they attack the pawn chain, while white's pieces are passive, they have nothing to attack. Actually, only the queen is defending one pawn. Okay, so here we go. A3 remains weak, a5 remains weak, and black manages to activate the dark squared bishop. The king goes on a dark square. And now, what a beautiful move. The bishop gets sacrificed because obviously if white takes with the queen, there will be a check on f2 and then checkmate. So just in two, checkmate in two. Bishop e3 attacking queen and pawn. The queen moves away and the queen takes on a4. Now black has a passed pawn, an open queen side and a pair of bishops. And the pawn on a5 will be very soon gone. Okay, knight f3, check, bishop f1, queen to c3. Okay, king to g2. White has to pay attention. For example, white can't move the knight away because of queen takes g3, right? The pawn on f2 is still pinned. So king g2 first, bishop a4, queen to c4, and finally they trade queens. And the bishop is attacking the weak pawn on e4, and the other bishop is attacking both the knight and the weak pawn on a5. Okay, so white will simplify the position a little bit, but we lose the pawn on a5. So basically now black is one pawn up in the endgame, and he's very soon to promote. And can you see now a very important move? Pawn to h5 to fix white's pawn structure on dark squares, because black has the dark squared bishop. So black has just played the 53rd move and white resigns. Okay, it's impossible for white to approach black's pawns with the king, because then the bishop jumps on f2 or goes to f2 and simply takes the pawns, and it's sufficient for black just to infiltrate with his king in white's territory and promote his passed pawns to win. Okay, so this is how black won, and I wanted to show you how powerful the pair of bishops can become when we open the position and give them something to attack. Okay, so my dear friends, I thank you so much for your attention, and I cannot wait to talk to you in our next video. Have a wonderful day.